After touring around Europe with his band in the late 70s, Barry's illustrious career started in the early 80s with international chart toppers Brotherhood of Man. Then he became a UK top nightclub DJ whilst writing and producing for many famous hit artists. In the 90s, he turned to country music for inspiration and wrote worldwide hit 5, 6, 7, 8, leading to his formation of pop band Steps, who have now had numerous single and album chart success. After more hits with such diverse acts as Sonia, John Otway and the Cheeky Girls, plus a song in the double Oscar-winning film Little Miss Sunshine, Barry moved to the Sunshine Paradise of Thailand, where he's been presenting on radio and TV, as well as continuing to perform music live. His passion has always been songwriting, and this he successfully continues to do.
Well, now it's 2004 and you're approaching your 50th.
Yes, and did I celebrate in style? First of all, we went to Vegas. I always thought that on my 50th birthday, it'd be great to go to the best show in Vegas. So managed to get a US visa for Elena, and we went to Los Angeles, to Laguna Beach, where I had stayed with some friends there that I stayed with before. We went down to San Diego. And then we went across to Las Vegas, where Marthan from Oregon came down to meet us, and with one of her friends. And oh, did we have a wild time there? That was a fantastic time in Las Vegas. It really was. Went across the Grand Canyon, which was the present from Elenia to me. Or we did it together. Flew through the Grand Canyon on the morning of my birthday. In the afternoon. It was her idea, Elena's idea, to get another girl to come to our hotel room and have a rock and roll ménage à trois. Yes, that's the way to celebrate your 50th. But afterwards then we went to the best show in town, which was the Cirque du Soleil. And I really celebrated my 50th birthday in style. And then on returning to the UK, I organised a party for all my friends at the tennis club, of which I was, it was like my second home, the tennis club. I was down there all the time. And it's a fantastic club, 10 indoor courts. I was down there nearly every day, or during the week anyway. So I had a party there. They let me use it. I had a party. My sister did a big buffet. And would you believe it? John Otway came and performed. He said, well, you did my 50th, so I'll do your 50th. And also my band at that time, we set up and we played as well. So it was a fantastic party. I couldn't have wished for a better 50th. It was like a 50th birthday party week.
Then you and Elena were invited to Moscow.
Yes. As if we hadn't done enough already. Just after we came back and I had my 50th birthday party, Paul Murray, a friend of mine who had a cosmetics distribution centre in Southampton, he was looking for a distributor in Russia. And he invited myself and Elena to go to Moscow with him to a beauty expo where he was looking for, as I say, a distributor that he could trust. And he felt if he took a Russian-speaking friend with him, that they would be able to suss out if they were for real or not. So yeah, I had a fantastic VIP week in Moscow, and we stayed at the best hotels, we went to the best restaurants, we visited Red Square, we went into the Kremlin. It was a wonderful week, and yes, Paul did get that distributor that he wanted.
And now, tell me about your frolics with the Cheeky Girls.
What can I tell you? It all started out with a Christmas song. I'd written this Christmas song called I'd Like to Give You One for Christmas. And I just thought the Cheeky Girls would be ideal for it. So I got in touch with them, and myself and Elena, we went up to visit them in Maida Vale at their condo. And they were taken with me. They knew about my background with Steps, and pop acts in general. But they didn't really want to do a Christmas song because I think they'd done one the year before. Cheeky Christmas, was it? I'm not sure. But anyway, they had an idea for a song about flamenco. I remember their mum saying, "Oh, they love to dance the flamenco." And they're good dancers. They love the flamenco. So we would. Can you put together a song to go with flamenco? So I thought for a while, and I thought, I got it. I've got the great title, Cheeky Flamenco. Yes. So I went back to my studio, started putting something together. It sounded a bit Gypsy Kings-ish, and got a real trumpet player in to do some kind of mariachi trumpet on it, and then the girls came and started doing the vocals, put the vocals down, and I've got to tell you, I loved working with them. I really did. They were so warm and so fun to be with. And I'll never forget that first meeting when we went up there to Maida Vale, and they're serving us tea and biscuits, and I thought, these girls are stars now. They're serving me tea and biscuits. This is nice. But anyway, when they came down to we recorded a few tracks after that as well. And sometimes, if their mother didn't accompany them to the studio, and it was just their stepfather, he would very often go off and have a walk down by the seafront, because they lived in London. So he left me alone with the Cheeky Girls, and I've got to tell you, they can be cheeky. We put a track together called Boys and Girls, which was a play on the song Boys, Boys, Boys. So it's boys and girls. And then they said to me, when we do our gigs, we want to come on with something really packing a punch. And we need something, especially, they sometimes did universities. I guess people booked them for their quirky value. And so we went through a few songs, and we finally arrived at Satisfaction, the Rolling Stones' Satisfaction. I know it sounds bizarre, but we recorded it and it really did work. And I was cracking up hearing them sing, "When I'm driving in my car, I can't get no satisfaction." Anyway, we did it, and it really went down so well at their gigs. In fact, I went to some of their gigs with them. And I got quite close with the Cheeky Girls, and lovely girls. And then they had a special birthday party for, I think they're twins, so their birthdays were on the same day. And OK Magazine put on like a birthday party for them. This was, I think, around about October. And there was lots of celebrities there, because all they want is the pictures for the magazine, isn't it, really? And Big Brother had just finished the TV program Big Brother. I think it was Big Brother 5, and I always remember it was the one that the trans girl won, Nadia, if anybody remembers that. But there was a girl who came in and out of the house. She wasn't in there for very long, called Becky, and I remember when I first saw her on there, I thought, oh, she's nice. I wouldn't mind. Yeah, anyway. So all of the Big Brother cast, all of the contributors, they were there at that party. And sure enough, there was Becky. And anyway, she came over and we got chatting. And she said, well, you know, I'm a singer as well. I'd like to record some songs. So I said, well, why don't we get together and do some?
You are doing many wedding gigs now, and I believe you have a really fab story to tell me about one of them.
Ah, yes. My party band, we used to do a lot of high-so weddings in the area, especially between Southampton and Andover. There was a lot of beautiful country villages with a lot of wealthy people, and they were always willing to pay good money for a good band, especially for a wedding. And if we did one wedding, then we'd end up doing another one because people would recommend us all the time. But I always had a special rule, especially for weddings. You don't want to upset one side of the family or some of the guests by having somebody come up and drunkenly sing on stage with us. So I never let singers come up, unless it was pre-arranged, of course. but I never let singers come up and sing with us. Anyway, one day we were at this society wedding, and this long-haired guy with jeans on comes up to the stage and says, is it okay if I come up and sing a couple of songs? I am professional and I've got my guitar in the car. And I said, I'm sorry, but I really don't allow it. It's just a general rule I have. And he says, oh, but everybody knows me. And I went, I'm sorry, unless we've rehearsed it beforehand, I'm sorry, can't do it. Anyway, roll on a few months and I'm doing another wedding, and it's going really well. And after the first set, the bride came up and said, we booked you because of that wedding you did a few months ago, blah, blah, blah. And do you remember that guy that wanted to come up and sing with you with long hair and jeans? And I went, yeah, I do vaguely, yes. She says, that was James Blunt. And I thought about it, and oh yes, it was. So I couldn't wait to go backstage. We stopped James Blunt from singing with us.
And what about the many celebrity gigs you were doing?
Yeah, we were in demand, and we would do these gigs for the Rhys Daniels Trust. It was called the Butterfly Ball. We'd do golf charity days with celebrities. And one lady that really took to us and loved our band was Pauline Quirk from the TV series Birds of a Feather. And she used to bring Linda Robson along as well. She loved it because we used to teach a little bit of line dancing to 5, 6, 7, 8 and a couple of other songs. And it used to get them involved. So she used to book us for all kinds of these celebrity occasions. And we used to get people like Kenny Lynch coming up and singing a couple of songs with us. I remember Katrina from Katrina and the Waves, who sung Walking on Sunshine. We had her come in and singing that very song with us. And I very often used to bring along my mother because she loved seeing what was going on and meeting some of these celebrities. And she got on so great with Pauline Quirk that I would turn up to gigs sometimes and Pauline would say, "Hi Barry, where's your mum?" So yeah, eventually we got invited to a TV recording of Birds of a Feather, and of course I took my mother along to that, and I think I took my sister as well, and they were in their element. And then another thing that Pauline booked us for was she was making a feature film with Dennis Waterman, there was Brian Connolly, and it was down in Wales. That was it. So we had to go into the depths of Wales. And she wanted us to play at the wrap party, which is the end of the film celebration. It's all over, it's all done, it's in the can. Let's have a party. And I remember Dennis Waterman, he was really drunk. And I remember buying an album of his many in the late 70s. But he was so drunk, and he came up on stage and he sung a couple of songs with us. And I remember doing the Minder theme. He sung the Minder theme, but I remember he was completely out of it. And then at one of those celebrity charity golf days that we played at, the golf hero John Nichol was there, and he loved our band and invited us to play at his wedding, which was a real privilege. I remember James Whale being there, and there were other celebrities, but I mean, just the fact that it was him, it was just fantastic to be asked to do that.
And I note that you had another great success at this time, but it wasn't anything to do with music.
Ah, you mean tennis? Yes, tennis was my passion outside of music, and I was playing nearly every day during the week, and there was a day league that went on all year, and lo and behold, I won it. Unbelievable. It's just something that I never thought in a million years I would ever do, win a sports trophy. So I was very happy to go and collect that.
And Otway?
Yeah, Otway. He was thinking of his next big thing, and the lunacy of Otway. He suddenly dreamt up this idea of doing a world tour. He found out that there was a Tahitian Airlines airplane which we could charter for a couple of weeks, and we could do gigs all over the world and take our own fans, or take his fans along for the ride. Of course, they'd have to buy tickets to come on the world tour. Anyway, he felt like he could finance it and he could get enough people to get on board, so to speak. So he decided that to start the whole ball rolling, he needed an album. And so we met up and discussed what kind of songs we could put on it. And then we met up and wrote a bunch of songs. Crazy songs there, and by now I had freedom to put in some ideas, and we came up with some really wacky ideas. Some of the songs turned out so good that I do believe that John Otway still has them in his set today. Anyway, we called the album Ot Air, and actually we did anticipate that we could have the Cheeky Girls as stewardesses, airline stewardesses, dressed up as sexy airline stewardesses. That was one of the things we were going to do. But we also had a couple of tracks on the album which we knew would just be too cheesy or too poppy. I mean, I was known as the King of Cheese by then, and we felt like we had to keep them secret from the band, otherwise they'd get upset. And once they're out on the CD, it was too late. But one of the songs was a Benny Hill song called The Old Fiddler. And we managed to get Wild Willie Barrett, John Otway's old cohort, to come to my studio and do and actually it was received really well. We ended up putting that into the set, and with John Otway trying to play it on the fiddle. And it was hilarious. John Otway gigs are always hilarious.
Now, what about that ultra cheesy Christmas song?
Yes, Give You One for Christmas, which rejected by the Cheeky Girls. But the girls in my band, they said, well, why don't you record it with us and still put it out? And I said, well, we can have a go. I did record it with the girls in the band. And we made this animated video. I think it was Kelly, her works department. They were able to use computer animation, which was a little bit new to me at the time. But we did end up making a very cheesy video. It went along with it perfectly. So I went around, I hawked it around, and the first label I went to was Gut Records, which had been suggested to me. And when I went there, they loved it. They said, this is fantastic. And they said, what's the name of the band? I said, well, we sometimes go out as Hot Pants A Go-Go when we do a 60s style show. And they said, well, yeah, Hot Pants, it's a great name. And then we can do an online survey. Is this song hot or is it pants? Well, I'd already taken the video to a couple of pop video channels and shown them it, and they loved it. So the song actually did become a hit because at Christmas it was in the top 5 of one of the video channels. Unfortunately, as far as the main charts was concerned, despite a promo tour, we did quite an extensive promo tour, we were scuppered by a remake of the Band Aid song, Do They Know It's Christmas, which actually wasn't very good. It wasn't as good as the original. But what could we do? As far as we were concerned, every time you switch the TV on, or some of the pop channels, there we were. There was our video. There was our song. I'd like to give you one for Christmas. So then it was 2005, and we decided, well, maybe we should try and follow it up and capitalize on the exposure that we'd had from the Christmas song. So I wrote this song about the army. We were doing a lot of gigs at army bases, and so I came up with this idea of I love the phrase "Go Commando," so I thought I'll write a song called "Go Go Commando," and it was a good song, and we filmed a video on an actual army tank. When I took it to Gut Records, Steve Tandy, he loved it, but the only problem there was that they were putting all of their resources into a new phenomenon. It was a ringtone that was on phones that was so popular, called the Crazy Frog. Yes, I know, we were scuppered this time by a crazy frog.
And then, lo and behold, you won another tennis trophy.
Yep, I couldn't believe that. The following year, everybody was out to get me because I'd won the championship the year before. So yeah, I won the Day League again, won a second tennis trophy. So it wasn't a fluke the first time. And the funny thing is, of all the trophies, all the records, the record awards that I've got on my walls, my favourite successes were those 2 tennis trophies, because it's just something I never thought in a million years I could ever achieve. And when you do achieve something like that, it's really special.
Tell me about Dean Friedman. You were originally a fan, right?
Yeah, out of the blue, I suddenly got this email from Dean Friedman, who was really impressed with what I'd done with John Otway. And he said that it was coming up to a big anniversary of his big hit, Lucky Stars. You can thank your lucky stars, we're not as smart as we'd like to think we are. Big hit. And I'd been to see Dean Friedman in concert many years before, I think with Janie. I loved his style of songwriting, and he told me that he was going to be at the Edinburgh Festival and he'd like to meet up with me because he'd like to remake Lucky Stars, but maybe with a different style or a different way. So we did meet at the Edinburgh Festival, became really good friends. He came down to my studio when his tour was heading down towards the south. We arranged he'd come to my studio and put a vocal on an idea that I'd put together. And there's a female response a duo thing that goes on in that song. So I got Janie down to do the response. So it's really funny that me and Janie went to see him all of those years ago, and now here we are working with him on a remake of his biggest hit.
You and Elena doing okay?
Yes, by now Elena had a British passport. She'd passed her beauty college exams. She was doing beauty treatments for people, and we were going on holidays to Venice, to Rome. We were having a good time together. And then I had a group called Sasso. They were called Sasso. There were two girls from Brighton, and I suggested they have another guy with them, and we call the band Love Triangle, and they're very hippie-ish. I loved writing for them and producing them because it was a kind of like a hippie mamas and papas style act, although the girls looked great. Unfortunately, they didn't quite put in the effort that was needed. Like always around about that time, everybody thought everything was done for them, but they did get to support Jefferson Airplane at the Roundhouse in Camden.
Then a return to the Middle East and a New Year's Eve reunion with your old DJ friend Crazy Kevin. I mean, what happened there?
Ah, yes, Crazy Kevin. He was going to be doing a gig at the Diplomat Hotel in Bahrain, which I knew about because I played there before with Brotherhood of Man in the early 80s. And he called me up and said they need a band. I put you forward because it would be great to work with you, and you'd be perfect for the evening. So this was going into from 2005 into 2006 for New Year's Eve, one of the most opulent New Year's Eve parties I've ever witnessed. There's so many live cooking stations around this hotel, and a very wealthy clientele. And especially a lot of Saudi Arabians who'd come over. There was a bridge, they'd build a bridge, so they'd just come over the bridge, and they were doing all the things they weren't allowed to do in Saudi Arabia. It was great fun, great atmosphere, great to see Crazy Kevin again. And so we rolled into the new year. Most of my band, they had to return home for one reason or another. But myself and Elena decided to stay on for a week and have a holiday. So Crazy Kevin, he knew the owner or the manager of the Bahrain Grand Prix racing track, and he took us down there, and there was basically only us three, plus the manager, plus the guy who looked after the Holden racing cars there. And we ended up driving around the track, and it was just amazing. A Grand Prix track to yourself. And then the following month, I went down to Midem in south of France, which is the music trade fair, and I was trying to shop Love Triangle around, and I had another band called Big Evening News, a boy band, but they weren't. They were a boy band that played instruments. They were a proper band, and I'd been producing them. So I had a couple of things to shop around, and while I was there, I was sitting outside having a very expensive glass of wine, 10 euros I think it was then. I mean, this is 2006, and thinking, oh, this is really expensive. And then one of the hotel assistants came out and said, there's a band going to be playing in a moment or two. Would you like to come in and see them? So we thought, okay, let's wander in there. Would you believe it was Don Henley? Don Henley from the Eagles did a full set. It seems that he had some kind of download company. He had interest in a download company, and they got him over with his band to do a set at this the Martinez Hotel, which was the famous hotel where everybody tended to meet in the evenings. So what a trip that was.
You've got a lovely story to tell about your mum's 79th birthday, which was sadly to be her last.
Yes, February the 13th was always my mum's birthday, the day before Valentine's Day, and she's going to be 79. What do you buy somebody who is that kind of age? It's not easy to buy things for them that they haven't already had. So by then you could shop online, and I was looking online, and I came across an offer whereby if you bought a square foot of land in this certain area in Scotland, they will send you the deeds to that land, and the owner would be a lord or lady, actually a laird as it is in Scottish. I thought, this is perfect. She can be Lady Joan Upton. And so together with my sister, we organised a chauffeur-driven car to take her from her sheltered accommodation to a stately home where we'd organised tea and dinner, and we crowned her Lady Joan Upton. Well, it was the best present I think I've ever bought her. And she dined out on it for weeks back at her sheltered accommodation with all her friends there. And she was getting them to bow to her or, show respect.
Then you moved out to a stately country home. Where was that?
Oh, this was just outside Southampton, between Southampton and Portsmouth, out in the country. There was a beautiful area called Shirrell Heath, near a lovely little village called Wickham. And this house had many rooms in it, and so it meant I could have my studio there, and Elena could have a beauty room there. I could have an office, and had big gardens, lovely trees. It was a proper rock star's hangout.
Then back to the Middle East again.
Yes, Wild at Heart, my band, we were asked to go out and play again in Bahrain. By then, I'd got new singers, and Katie and Sam. And Lena was a little bit paranoid about these singers, and she thought that I was having some kind of relationship with them, which actually I wasn't. But she still got paranoid about it. And I remember it was a St. George's dinner, and we had a lookalike of Her Majesty the Queen. We actually flew out with her, this lookalike, and I sat next to her, and she was telling me loads of stories. So funny having the Queen tell you all these stories on an aeroplane. Anyway, back to Elena, and she was at one point, she even threatened suicide because she was getting so wound up. But we managed to survive the trip, but I could see that there were cracks in the marriage were starting to take place.
I believe the summer of 2006 was rather nice weather-wise.
Yes. Now, my new country home, it wasn't a stately country home, but it looked a little bit palatial. So I brought my mum down there for a holiday and to stay for a few days. We toured all the country villages. I could tell she was really proud of me. and she was proud of all my achievements. And unfortunately, that was to be her last vacation, because just after that, I got a call at 2 a.m. from my sister that she'd had a stroke and she'd been taken to Basingstoke Hospital. When I got there, she was awake and she was okay, but the doctors told us that she may have another stroke, and if she does, we want to keep her alive. And we said no, because just let her go, because she wouldn't like the quality of life that she would have had then. And I remember looking at her, and she said she was a bit scared of what was going to happen. So next day, I was on a gig with John Otway, and on the way back the following morning, I got the news that she just passed away peacefully. So I went to Basingstoke Hospital, and myself and my mother, we never really shared that much close affection. I don't know whether it was from when I was a kid or whatever, but I kind of rectified everything by kissing her on the forehead and saying thank you for everything.
And her funeral was a bit unconventional, wasn't it?
Yes, just a bit, because I was organising it. My mother was always a very up person, very positive. She would have hated to have a very dark and dismal funeral. So I decided that the music should be jolly, which went down well with most people, but there was a few words of dissent. But how we did it, as the coffin came in, I had the music of Mrs. Mills playing, which she used to love when she was young, the piano playing. And I did a speech whereby I sung a song all about Lady Joan, because let's face it, by now she was Lady Joan Upton. And as the coffin went away, I had the song Dance the Night Away, because she always loved dancing. She was always into dancing when she was younger, and she loved that song by the Mavericks, Dance the Night Away. So I had that playing. Yeah, there was a couple of words of dissent, but it was up to me, wasn't it? Or it's up. And my sister was fine with it. And a postscript, just before Christmas that year, my cousin Graham, who was the principal of a deaf school in Brighton, invited myself and Elena to their Christmas show, where I could hand over a cheque to them as part of my mother's wishes for any funeral monetary gifts. And during the show, to show appreciation, the deaf students included a dance rendition via their felt vibrations to my song 5, 6, 7, 8 as a thank you. I'll tell you, I was so deeply touched to the point of tears, and I felt that my mother's passing had positively manifested itself in so many fab ways that she would have loved.
And what about the John Otway World Tour?
Yes, what about it? Let's have a recap. So it was going to be called the Otway Tour. We had a Tahitian Airlines aeroplane. We're going to fly. The gigs were going to start off from Liverpool, and then we're going to fly to New York and go to Vegas, do a gig in Tahiti, in Sydney, Sydney Opera House, and then in China, going to Dubai, and then I think Switzerland, and finally back to the UK. And there was all these kind of crazy things around it. I mean, like the cheeky girls being air stewardesses, and the longest guitar solo attempt, which the idea was, if you started playing a guitar solo just by the international date line, and you finished it on the other side of the international date line, then that guitar solo was over 24 hours long. That's the kind of thinking of Otway. So we had 2 support acts which were going to be on the tour: Glenn Tilbrook from Squeeze and Steve Harley. And we were just so looking forward to it. It was going to be something that was going to be totally unique. And obviously the whole thing would be filmed. And just before, about a couple of weeks before the tour was meant to begin, suddenly the finances collapsed for some reason. There was, I don't know exactly what it was, some kind of technical thing to do with airports and where the plane was actually going to be. And suddenly the tour was off. And for Otway, there was a big financial collapse. And he was in depression for quite a while, I think, after that. Although we did end up doing the Cavern gig with Glenn Tilbrook, very nice guy, Glenn, and I turned it into a Beatles weekend in Liverpool, and went with Elena, and we did the Magical Mystery Tour, which toured around all the famous Beatles spots, and I actually played at the Cavern. How good is that? Went to the Beatles Museum, that was it. Made it a whole rock and roll weekend, but I really was sorry for John.
So how was your marriage working out now?
Well, after 4 years, cracks were appearing, and every Sunday there was like an inquest, after we'd been doing the weekends gigs, and I was being accused of flirting at gigs. I mean, that's what you do if you're an entertainer. You have to do a certain amount of flirting. So then there was a bit of a bombshell because Elena's sister, Dasha, she wanted to come over, and I said, okay, yeah, she could stay with us for a while. Well, Dasha wasn't very dashing, and she wasn't as beautiful as Elena, and she was a bit of a slob, that's all I can say. She didn't speak English, so there was so much Russian being spoken in my home, I felt like the foreigner in the house. I did install them a satellite TV, which would get them Russian TV in, but of course I never saw Elena. She was with her sister all the time watching Russian TV. So I did feel like a foreigner in my own house.
And how about your contribution to an Oscar-winning film?
Who could have thunk this? Yeah, so New Year's Eve 2006, I'm flying out to Bahrain to do another gig, another New Year's Eve gig, and the in-flight movie, one of the in-flight movies, was a film called Little Miss Sunshine. Now, Gordon Pagoda, who I wrote a song called Dancing in the Driver's Seat with, had already told me before that it was going to be in this film, Little Miss Sunshine, our song, but it's a small independent film. I don't know if it's any good or not. And it didn't click with me that this was the same film. But I'm on the flight and I'm watching, and suddenly this song comes on, and I'm going, I know this song. Hang on a minute. I co-wrote this song, and that's my production. So when we got to Bahrain, I told Crazy Kevin, my friend, about it, and he was working for Radio Bahrain, and from there we managed to phone up Gordon Pagoda, and he said, "Oh yes, it's doing really well. It's just won the Sundance Festival, and it's nominated for 4 Oscars." So what a great start to 2007. and on my 53rd birthday, I had a gig with a rock band, but we turned it into an Oscar party. And would you believe it? Little Miss Sunshine won 2 Oscars. I've got a song in an Oscar-winning film.
And around this time, you suddenly became a radio DJ. How did that come about?
Well, a friend of mine, Matt Black, a fantastic piano player and performer, very funny guy. He was a great friend of mine, and he invited me to be a guest on a program he was doing on Forest FM out in the New Forest between Southampton and Bournemouth. And I went on it, and we just bantered around, and it was just great fun. So he said, you should be on this program every week. And Steve Saville, the station manager, who had a good sense of humour, he said, yes, that's a great idea. So I started coming in to the show every Monday, and it was just good fun. We started coming up with characters and doing daft things. And then Matt, he had a dog that had puppies, and they needed 24-hour attention, so he couldn't do the show. So I knew technical stuff. I knew how to work mixers and stuff. So Steve said, "Yeah, why don't you do it by yourself?" And I did, and so I became a radio DJ. And one evening at an Otway gig, there was a guy who was a total legend, the late 50s, early 60s, with the Shadows, a guy called Jet Harris. He was there, and I invited him onto the show. I said, "Could we do a phone-in or something like that? You know, I'd love to have a chat with you." And he went, "Oh, I'll come into the show, and we'll have and usually guests, they would come on for about, 20 minutes, half an hour. He stayed for the whole 3 hours, and he enjoyed it immensely. He was such a great guest, and what a legend. And the stories that he told, it was fantastic. It's only a small radio station, but I had Nicky from Brotherhood of Man on it. I had Ray Dorset from Mungo Jerry. Paul Young did a phone-in. Hugh Cornwell from the Stranglers, he did a phone-in. And actually, it was like a media university. I was learning so much while I was doing this fun program.
In the meantime, your association with Gut Records was blossoming, and your studio became a track factory.
Yes, it all started with the 2006 World Cup, and Gut Records wanted to put a CD out of all the famous football songs surrounding the World Cup. And there was 3 songs I think they couldn't get a license on, so it meant re-recording them. They asked me if I would re-record the songs to go onto the CD. Well, the recordings came out really good and very similar to the originals, and I ended up getting a silver disc for it because it sold so well. And because of the success of that, they then asked me to do a Grease party album, which was to re-record all the songs from the famous Grease film. So I knew on this one I'm going to have to have a real drummer and make it sound like a real band. So I got Adam from Otway's band down and set him up in my lounge, mic'd him all up, and he was good. He played along with all the original songs, and we got a great drum sound. Then that album became so successful, they asked me to do a Halloween party album. And by the way, all these albums were being TV advertised, and I was getting paid well for them. So the Halloween party album, they said that could you do an extra spooky soundtrack? So I put this thing together with all these noises, and I got credited as the writer. Just noises, ooh, that kind of thing. Anyway, the idea was it was for kids to put on at a Halloween party, and that still sells well even to this day. But there was one incident I remember at the end of when I finished the album. All of a sudden they called me up and said, one of the tracks we were going to put on it, which was going to be licensed, was Bat Out of Hell, and we can't get the license for it now, so can you quickly record it? I says, and this was, I think it was Friday or Saturday, and when do you need it? They said Monday. So I remember it was summer, middle of summer, it was really hot, I had the windows open, and I'm singing my heart out. I was trying to get those high notes, those meatloaf notes, but I did it. And that was the thing that they loved about what I did, was I always hit the deadline.
2007 was when you first set foot in Thailand. How did that happen?
Yes. Well, I'd won those 2 tennis trophies, but at a cost, because my knees were taking a bit of a hammering. And so they were painful, especially walking downstairs. So I had private medical insurance. I thought, well, now's the time to use it. So I went to a private hospital and ended up seeing the Portsmouth Football Club surgeon. And he said I need keyhole surgery on both knees to take out some floating cartilage. I was stayed in overnight, and they gave me a video, the video of the camera going into my knees the next day, which was interesting. And I was on crutches for a few days, and I wasn't allowed to play tennis for 2 months. And when I was in Bahrain with Crazy Kevin, he had a lady newsreader who owned a property in, it was a holiday home in Koh Samui in Thailand. And she was saying how great it was there. And I'd had other friends from the tennis club talk about how they love Thailand. So I thought, time to give it a try. I can't play tennis for 2 months. So we flew out there and rented her villa for a couple of weeks, convalescence. And that was my first time in the Far East. And it was my first time, to be honest, to go to Southeast Asia. I'd never been that side before because I was always going to America. Anyway, it just opened my eyes to how beautiful it was there. And I did a bit of songwriting on the porch there, looking out onto the sea. Kevin, my friend Kevin, he'd been to Thailand many times, and he was having a house built in Pattaya. Spoiler alert, that house is now my house, and it has been for the past 15 years. Anyway, getting back to it, while we were in Koh Samui, Elena became a right pain in the butt, and I just thought, it doesn't matter where I take you, what I do, you're always complaining. I think what it was, that she'd lost that exotic charm of being a Russian with an accent, and she'd become so English. And I think mixing with girls from Littlehampton, she got a beauty business there now, and it was just getting a little bit too much. However, on a good note, the pain in my knees disappeared.
Tell me about the children's album.
Ah, yes. You're talking about my favourite TV themes. Okay, it's now 2008. Gut Records were just throwing these albums at me, and they were loving what I was giving them. So they decided to have my favourite TV themes as a theme. And I got a fab deal. I was getting a really good deal. I was going to get royalties as well now. So I was recording the theme tunes to children's TV programmes, Peppa Pig, Postman Pat, Thunderbirds, Teletubbies, which Shelley from my band, she loved the Teletubbies, and she could impersonate their voices, so she was very useful for that. And when they TV advertised it, first of all they said, can you, some of these songs or these themes are only 30 seconds long, so can you extend them out? So I would repeat the theme and then do an instrumental, then repeat it again. So it would be kind of like 2 minutes long. And on the TV advert, I cracked up when I first saw it, and they said, at last, the full-length versions. And on top of that, I did a set of mixes without the lead vocal in, and they did a bonus karaoke album. It was really funny. But anyway, it was all great. And at the end of that album, I really worked hard on that. I was working morning, noon and night, except for when I take a break for tennis. But at the end of that, I really did need a holiday.
Let me guess, Thailand?
Well, Elena could only get a 1 week off work. So I said to her, well, why don't I go out and visit Kevin first in Pattaya, and then I'll meet you a week later, and then we'll go to Phuket or something. Do something different and visit another part of Thailand. So I called Kevin, and he was in Pattaya with his partner Lorna, and he'd just moved into his new house. And I said, is the guest room available? He said, yes, come over. I said, right, I'm booking a flight, I'll be over in 1 or 2 days' time. What could go wrong? I took to the scene here in Pattaya like a duck to water. My Pop-Tart naughtiness surfaced again. Kevin was a great instructor. He knew the scene already, so I had a very good teacher. And on the eve of my meeting of Elena in Bangkok, it was my 54th birthday. So I celebrated by getting 2 girls back to the house, frolicking around in the pool all night long. And I remember the neighbour, he was out early that day, and he got into his car and he could hear the noise that was going on, and he shouted, "Welcome to Thailand!" Anyway, I went up and met Elena in Bangkok, and off we went to Phuket, had a wonderful time there. And then we went on a few trips out to the islands, and there was a eureka moment when we were on this tiny island on a snorkeling tour. And I decided, I really fancy a coconut shake. And there was a reggae bar, small reggae bar there, playing Bob Marley, of course. And I had my coconut shake, and I just looked around, and I looked at the beautiful water, the sky, the beach, and I just thought to myself, this is paradise. This really is paradise. Should I move here?
So back to the UK and more productions.
Yeah, Gut Records, they were just throwing all these different things at me. First of all, they wanted a new remix of I'm Too Sexy, which was Right Said Fred. They had a big hit with it. And they were getting problems on certain licenses because there was this line in it that sounded like Coronation Street. Da 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 da. So I had to, they sent me the vocals, and I had to remake the song and put a different riff in. So it sounded similar, but it wasn't the same notes as Coronation Street. And then we did my favourite musicals, which was another album of remakes. And Nikki from Brotherhood of Man, I was talking to her about it, and she said, I'd love to come and sing on that. I love musicals. And she came down and put some wonderful vocals on it. It was just like old times. Me and Nikki in the studio together. Fantastic. And then there was a thing called the Rhythm Festival up in Bedford. And Dean Friedman was coming over to be one of the special artists to appear at it. Top of the bill was Donovan, and then there was Arlo Guthrie, and Dean Friedman. He usually works solo. He usually does gigs solo with just a piano or guitar. But for this one, they said, "We really love you to have a band with you." So he called me up and said, "Can you put a band together?" Which I did, including a fantastic sax player. When we did it, we had one night of rehearsal beforehand, but everything came together really well. He sent me the music over before, and I sent the songs to the rest of the band to learn, and we did it admirably. Donovan, it was great to meet him backstage, and I happened to talk to him about how I've learnt to play the guitar and how I learnt from a Donovan songbook. And he says, "You're not the first person to tell me that." And he knew Tony Hillen, my manager, and it was just a lovely atmosphere backstage. I met Arlo Guthrie, who's a legend. So with all this music that I was producing, especially for Gut Records, most bands at that period, they couldn't get a deal for love nor money, and I had this amazing record deal.
And were you still doing radio shows?
Yes, Martin Perry, who was a friend of mine from Southampton, he had this magazine called And Magazine. He was a well-known character around Southampton because of that magazine, and he was asked by Radio Hampshire to do an And Magazine program, and we could talk about things that were going on in Southampton and preview things that were going to be happening at the weekend. So it was going to go out on a Friday night, although we would pre-record it. And the studios were at Southampton Football Club Stadium. So he asked me if I would co-host it with him. He wasn't so good with the technical stuff, and by now I'm a dab hand. So despite their system being totally different to what I'd been using, I quickly learnt it. And we made some great radio shows there. It really was a successful program. And more education for me with media. I included some wonderful interviews with some legendary people. We got Dean Friedman in one day, Tony Prince, because the film about Radio Caroline, the boat that rocked, had just come out, and Tony Prince gave us all the lowdown on what was good in the film, what wasn't. And then Mike Stevens, my old friend, who was Take That's musical director, gave us the insight on what it's like to tour with Take That. And then I did a tour with John Otway. Normally I would play keyboards, but the guitarist, he had another gig, so he wasn't able to do the tour. But I said, well, I know the songs, I know the acts, I can know the parts to play. So I ended up playing guitar on this hits tour. And one of the gigs on that rock circuit tour was the Cambridge Rock Festival. And that was a fantastic gig, really memorable, where myself and the other guitarists in the group, we did a playoff, a lead guitar playoff. It was very, very funny. But that was the lunacy of Otway's gigs. It was always a joy. And I remember at that Cambridge Rock Festival, I did a backstage interview with Andy Fairweatherlow, who I'd previously met years ago when I was with Brotherhood. And we did the interview, and then we turned the recorder off, and then we just chatted for like 1 or maybe 2 hours about guitars and life. And what a great guy, lovely guy, very interesting.
You helped your friend Kevin bring his cruiser to Thailand, correct?
Yes, he had this boat which we had loads of trips on to the Isle of Wight, but they were few and far between because the weather in the UK was so bad that now he was going to Thailand a lot, and he wanted his boat out there. So this 60-foot cruiser, it had already been an awful UK summer. He decided, that's it, I'm transporting it to Southeast Asia. I think it cost him 30,000 quid or something like that. So he transported it to Southeast Asia. He could only get it as far as Singapore. They couldn't get it all the way into Thailand. So anyway, I really wanted to do that trip from Singapore up to Pattaya in the boat, and so I flew out there and helped him bring the boat. There was myself, there was neighbour Alan, who was living next door to Kevin in Thailand, and there was a Kiwi sailor who was experienced, and he knew the Straits or the South China Sea, and he knew how to navigate it. So Kevin employed him for the trip, and it was just an amazing sight to see the boat when we first got to Singapore in the sunshine. And after a day of checks, we fitted a new GPS system, and then we headed up the Singapore Straits, up the coast of Malaysia. It was just flat calm, and I decided I didn't want to sleep down on the decks below. I wanted to sleep on the flybridge so that I could wake up and see the sunrise. And it really was magical. I mean, as I said, flat calm. The sunrise over the South China Sea was something very special. And I was reflecting even more and thinking, what am I doing in the UK? I should be here. I remember we finally got to Koh Samui and had a bit of shenanigans, as you would, as like sailors coming ashore. We'd only been to sea for about 5 days, but that was long enough. And we got a pile of girls back onto the boat and had one hell of a party. And then when I was back at Kevin's house, I was sitting in the pool one day, and I was just sitting there with a beer, and I was looking around and thinking, well, if I did move here, this is the kind of house I want to buy. It's a pool villa. It's like a bungalow. It's got 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. I could turn that room into a studio, and I was just working all this out in my head. And then Kevin came out with his beer, and we were chatting, and then he dropped the news to me that he'd bought a plot of land in a village quite close to this particular one, and he was going to build a bigger house. So the thought just came into my head, so what are you going to do with this house? Because I was visualizing the house as mine, And so I said, why don't I buy this house off you? And if you sell it to me for what you paid for it, I'll give you cash. And he said, done. The deal was done. Suddenly, I owned a home in Thailand. So then I had to go back to the UK and sell the dream to Elena. And to be honest, it didn't go down well. So I said, come on, let's just go off on holiday together somewhere and try to forget all this. So we went to Barbados, and I realised that Barbados wasn't a patch on Southeast Asia, and I thought, I really want to live there.
So 2008 was nearing to an end, and you suddenly got involved with I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Discuss. Okay, the bizarre things that happened to Barry Upton. David Van Day, my friend, and Timmy Mallet, who I'd never met, were in the jungle. I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. They suddenly came up with this song called Biff Baff Boff. And I remember saying to Elena at the time that, do you know what, that's the sort of thing I would end up producing. It's so cheesy and so crass. And would you believe it? David Van Day got voted out. Next minute, I've got this woman on the phone said, I'm David Van Day's agent. And I said, you don't even have to tell me. You want me to produce that song, Biff Baff Boff? And she said, yes. I'm a Pop-Tart. What am I going to say? Am I going to turn it down? So I did it. Recorded David, recorded Timmy, put my own ideas into the song. So it was a three-way writing partnership. So yes, I co-wrote Biff Baff Boff. And when it was finished, ITV2 were doing what the celebrities did after they left the jungle. And so they sent a camera crew down to my studio to see the song being recorded. So I was interviewed, and David was interviewed. There was Mike Reed there hovering around behind us. There was the local press. It was like a total circus. Very, very funny. And there was one particular moment where the camera was shooting over the desk, and David was trying to sing his part. Not very well, I should say. And at one point, I looked over to the camera and went like this. And they used that in all of the advertising for the programme. And every time they were doing a promo for it, or coming up, there's me going like this. Anyway, it was shown all over Christmas and into the new year. It was a great fun thing to do. 2009 was a year of change, and it started off okay?
Yes, Mercedes trucks. They had us play at a couple of events just before Christmas for their sales departments, and the managing director told us that you'll never get these people dancing. He says they're not easy to please. Anyway, we did, and we did a line dancing thing where we taught them the line dancing. Everybody joined in. He couldn't believe it. So at the beginning of 2009, they had the European Sales Awards at Disneyland in Paris. And so they said, we want you to come along and do the line dancing thing again, and then you can play at the awards ceremony as well, do your usual pop party act. And it was just amazing. It really was. The weather wasn't so good, but to be able to play in Disneyland was incredible. And we stayed at one of the Disneyland hotels. It was a fun event to go to, and very prestigious as well.
And then you were asked to get involved in a stage musical. Yes,
a friend of mine, been a friend for years, Ray Dorset, who everybody knows as Mungo Jerry. He wrote "In the Summertime When the Weather is High." He came up with the idea of doing "In the Summertime" the musical, and asked me if I'd like to get involved in the writing and the staging of the whole thing. I thought this would be an amazing thing. I've been playing that song "In the Summertime" since I was 16, and to get involved with Ray in a project would
be fantastic. We had a meeting with his producer, the producer of that very record, Barry Murray, and we also discussed what songs we would do and how we would do them. But Ray was at that time was tied up in litigation over getting his royalties from In the Summertime, and so it never really took off. It's a shame, really, because I think it was a great idea. However, as far as musicals are concerned, I'd already done my favourite musicals, the album for Gut Records. Well, they decided it was so successful, they wanted to do a second one. And so they gave me a whole load more titles, and I did that album. And then a Butlin's Party album, would you believe, with things like Agadoo on it, and all the party songs. So that was another fun album to do. I was just churning these things out, and my studio really was like a track factory.
And then another Pattaya, Thailand visit?
Yes, well, once I'd finished those albums, it was time for a little break, and so I decided, I'm going to pop over to Pattaya in Thailand and check out what I thought was going to be my house. And in fact, we'd come to the agreement I was going to buy it, and so I just wanted to go and just confirm that this was the thing that was the right thing to do at the time. Anyway, on that trip, I met a guy called Jan Abink. He used to work for Warner Brothers in promotions, Warner Brothers Records in Holland. And he'd been involved with Prince, Madonna, the Backstreet Boys. He said, you know what, you'd be a really good guest to have on the morning show on Pattaya People Radio. And so he took me in there, introduced me to the DJ at the time, Johnny Diamond, made up name. Anyway, the station manager, after hearing me on the radio, his name was Danny, he came and asked me, he says, have you done radio before? I said, I've done a lot of radio. I've been doing it back in the UK, and I've been interviewed on radio many times. And he said, well, you sounded good. He said, are you planning to move here? And I said, well, funnily enough, yes. He said, well, if you do, we've got a job for you here. So before I even came to Pattaya, I was being offered a job. So I returned to the UK. I sent Kevin a deposit payment for the house, and tried to convince Elena that this was the right thing to do. Anyway, off she goes to Kazakhstan, back home to Kazakhstan. And while she was there, I went to La Manga in southern Spain on a tennis trip with some tennis friends. Had a lovely week down there playing tennis on clay, which a surface I wasn't used to playing on, but it was an experience. Anyway, returned home, and Elena wasn't there. She hadn't returned from Kazakhstan. However, I got a knock at the door, and there was disaster with a capital D. And there was this guy serving me a summons for divorce, and my bank accounts were frozen. This was the worst day of my life.
Oh, so 2009 became the year from hell for you.
Well, whenever Elena mentioned the word divorce, she always said, I don't need money. I'm not after you for the money. Oh yes, right. Well, I had paid for everything during our marriage, but divorce is a funny thing, and she's got some Russian friends who I think had been in her ear, so she got a solicitor, and they took me to court accusing me of actually being a criminal. The judge didn't accept it because he saw my account. They accused me of falsifying my accounts. No, the judge wasn't having that. All my accounts were in order, my company accounts, my private accounts, and for the next couple of months we were in and out of court, and that they had this particular thing to throw at me and that particular thing to throw at me. And so I entered a very deep depression, as you would in that kind of situation. The only way I could avoid depression was by recording, and I recorded a kind of 60s inspired original album, and I was doing my my shows at Forest FM. I was playing tennis. I was doing gigs now without Elena, and I met a guy called Mike Fowler, who was a local musician, and we did a few tracks together. And then eventually the divorce was finalised, and there was a final settlement, and I had to pay quite a bit of money, and I was really angry, very, very angry about it. The inheritance that I got from my mother, I kind of was giving away to Elena, and I don't think I'd ever been so angry in my life.
But you were about to open a brand new chapter in your life.
Yeah, there were a few positives about at that time. Nadine, my daughter, had finally decided she wanted to see me again, and she wanted her son, who was now 4 years old, to know his grandfather. So we met up, and she had a completely different attitude. She'd calmed down a lot, and we got on like a house on fire. Went temping bowling, and we saw each other quite a few times after that. I finished my 60s style album. I got it all packaged and ready for sale. I paid Kevin in full for the house, so now I completely owned the house in Thailand, and we had a date set early October for me to come over and move in. So I moved out of my house, which I'd been renting for a couple of years because I'd already sold my previous house. I rented it because I knew I was going to move at some point or other. And so I moved into Kevin's house in just by the marina in Southampton. So in effect, I was living in his house, he was living in my house. So I put my studio into storage. I put my car and van somewhere where they could rest until I came back to the UK. And I kept everything just in case. You never know if everything went wrong. So I got to the airport to fly to Thailand, checked in, and then sat down with a coffee, and I just broke into tears because the last few months had been so challenging. And I remember phoning my Auntie Shirley and telling her about what had happened, and that now I'm going to Thailand, and I just broke down.
So moving to Pattaya, how did your life change?
Interesting confessions of a Pop-Tart.